The Toyota ALLION and its twin, that is the Toyota Premio, are popular cars in Kenya. They have actually built their reputation around reliability, fuel efficiency, and most importantly, lower ownership cost. Welcome to 026 Motoring once again. My name is Bill Oturi, and today I'll be taking you through a 2016 Toyota ALLION review. 026 Motoring makes your car ownership journey easy. We scout, inspect, and help you during a car purchase process. So if you want to purchase a car, you can actually shoot us a message or ring us, and then we're going to make your car ownership journey easy. Alright, here we go. A thorough and in-depth review of the 2016 Toyota ALLION. So let's start building this review by throwing off the basics first. So what exactly is the Toyota ALLION? Now the Toyota ALLION is a compact sedan produced by Toyota. Production started back in 2002, which actually was the first generation. It was called the T240 series. And now whatever I'm reviewing here today is a 2016 model, which falls under the second generation, which is called actually the T260 series, whose production started back in 2008. Now, most probably, if you are interested in the Toyota ALLION, maybe you want to learn about the different grades of the Toyota ALLION. But before I get there, it's also important learning that the Toyota ALLION only comes as a sedan body. So if maybe you want something that is a little bit like a wagon, you better look elsewhere. Maybe you can actually look at the Toyota Avensis. For the Toyota ALLION and the twin, that is the Toyota Premio, they only come as sedans. Now, let's get into the grades straight away. The Toyota ALLION actually comes in it's actually served in 3 different flavors. That is the grading. The first grade is called the ALLION A15. Basically, the grades of the Toyota ALLION are actually primarily depend on the engine, what is under the hood of the car. Now, the first that is the first grade of the Toyota ALLION is actually called the A15. So basically, the ALLION A15 is powered by a 1.5 liter. That is the Toyota ubiquitous 1.5 liter naturally aspirated petrol. It's normally called the 1NZFE. Now that A15, it's actually an equivalent of the F package in the Toyota Premio. Now above the ALLION A15, we have the ALLION A18. Now if you can actually judge from the number, the ALLION A18 is powered by a 1.8 liter, or if you like, an 1800cc. Also naturally aspirated petrol engine. It's actually an equivalent of the X package Premium. Now above the ALLION A18, next we have the ALLION A20. Now the ALLION A20 is also it's now powered by a 2.0 liter, or if you like 2000cc petrol engine. It's also naturally aspirated, meaning no turbo, no supercharger. Now the ALLION A20 is the top of the range ALLION, and it's actually an equivalent of the Toyota Premio G Superior. So those are basically the 3 grades of the Toyota ALLION: A15, A18, A20. So when you see A15, A18 and A20, I bet you now know what those things mean. Or when you see FX Origin the Premio, because it's a twin of this car, you also know what that means. When you're looking at the grades of the ALLION, that is the A15, A18 and A20, most probably in most cases the A20 will pack more features than the A18, and the A18 most probably will pack more features than the A15. But sometimes it's not normally a straight line, because sometimes in other cases you can actually find an A15 having more features than A18, but there is a high probability that an A20 will actually have more features than maybe the 18 and the A15. For example, the A20 in most cases will be coming with alloy rims. The seats actually will be, in some cases you can find them with leather seats, and then the driver seat in most cases will be electronically adjusted. Now that you've known the engine options, for this F, we have a 1.5 liter under the hood, naturally aspirated. It's actually a ubiquitous engine. It's applicable in very many Toyota cars. That is the Toyota Fielder, the Toyota Axio, the F package of the Premio, the Toyota Rumion, some versions of the Toyota Porte, the Toyota Speed. Let me tell you about the gearbox. Now for this T260 series or 265, the gearbox is only a continuous variable transmission. There is no manual transmission for this ALLION A15, or even for the A18, or even for the A20. It only comes with the CVT gearbox. Actually, even for the previous generation, that is the T240 series, it only came with an automatic gearbox. The ALLION has never been built with a manual transmission. So still, if you want a manual transmission car, you need to look elsewhere. In most cases, the ALLION will be a front-wheel drive car, that is a two-wheel drive of course, but sometimes you can actually find it in a four-wheel drive flavor. Now that you know the engine options now and the gearboxes, most probably you're interested to learn how the Toyota ALLION drives. The power output for this motor, this 1NZFE, is around 109-110 horsepower. So going by the power ratings, you can actually tell that you should not be expecting some freaking performance for this motor. Anyway, any sensible driver should not be expecting let me say electrifying performance from a 1.5 liter petrol engine, especially when it's natural aspirated or it has no turbo or even a supercharger. It's quite different if I was in maybe a Volkswagen Golf with a 1.4 TSI. The review could be somewhat different. Now, when I'm looking at the driving element of this car, it's actually very simple to drive. I like this steering wheel because it's actually very light. I like it this way. It's actually easy to hold and then use it to navigate. Now, when you try to push this car hard, there are obvious loud CVT moans. They are pretty there because this car doesn't have a definite number of gears. A CVT gearbox actually uses somewhat like a pulley or a belt, so it will actually be, it's typical. You expect a CVT gearbox actually to be a little bit loud. Now, how about handling? Acceleration actually takes a while in this car, which is actually expected. Now, when this car is at lower speeds, that is below 80 kilometers per hour, it's settled on the road, and then I could say that insulation of a road noise isn't that good, but immediately you hit 100 k's an hour or over. Let me actually be specific. Anything above 120 in this car, the car will actually be loud. Of course, there will be a lot of noise encroaching the cabin, and then it will be wallowy, or actually it feels light. So it is of course it's not a driver focused car, especially on that element, but still a sensible driver will not be pushing a 1.5 liter, especially an ALLION two-wheel drive, over 120 kilometers per hour, because it if you've actually handled let me say something like a speedboat on water, you know what I mean. The handling at high speeds, sometimes it's actually, let me say, somewhat risky, because the car will actually will struggle, because even the braking of this car is actually, let me say, a little bit poor, especially when the car is loaded, because for most ALLIONs and Premios, the braking is disc brakes at the front, and then there are drum brakes at the back. So any car with drum brakes at the back, you already know that the braking is not going to be that efficient. So if you want to have some reasonable life in the Toyota ALLION, you actually should keep it at low speeds. I normally go above 120 kilometers per hour, sometimes to 140, but sometimes you have to scan your environment pretty well, because stopping can actually become a problem. One thing I like about this CVT of this Toyota ALLION is its smoothness. Actually, you can't tell when the cars started hitting illegal speeds, especially when you're on good roads, because you mostly will find yourself around 100 k's, 120 kilometers per hour, because it's so smooth. It's not like a conventional automatic that will actually be pushing you, so that you could actually be telling that you are now doing illegal speeds. Now, when you need that overtaking grant, of course, in most applications, you'll actually push this motor hard, and actually you'll be pressing this gas pedal a little bit hard, so that you get that overtaking grant. If you are actually speeding or doing something like 120 kilometers per hour, something I'm already doing here, I normally do these speeds while keeping a safe distance with the car ahead of me, because it's actually very easy to rear-end the car ahead of you if you don't keep a safe distance, especially when you are doing crazy speeds. While these 1.5 liter and 1NZF is not that decently powered, it's actually very good for A to B movement and maybe city drives, because for city drives maybe you want something that is efficient. There are not many places whereby you will actually be pinning this motor hard, so that you get power. But on the highway, if you try to push it, now listen to this. You can actually hear those are loud CVT moans actually coming from the bonnet, because it's as you push it, it tends actually to come out a little bit loud. Now when you are like 2-3 people in the car, you may not feel that the car is underpowered, because the car actually feels the power rating is good for maybe 2-3 people. But then when the car is loaded and then you are going uphill, you need to push the motor hard, you need to push the gas pedal hard, so that you can actually get a reasonable grunt. So definitely, if you normally frequent or maybe you do several long distance travels, and maybe you are that person who holds luggages and people, maybe the best decision is not going to be, the best variant is not going to be the A15 flavor, but rather a different motor, that is the A18 or the A20. Of course, I'll be comparing these 3 engines in a few moments. I also deem it prudent telling you about how these ALLION grades compare. I've actually played with a couple of ALLION A18s, Premio X package, the Premio Superior, the ALLION A20. So it is actually pretty good that I tell you how they compare. Most probably it will help you shape your decision if you want to purchase. Now, if I was to purchase an ALLION, which is quite rare of course, I will actually settle for the ALLION A18, or if I will purchase a Premio, I could actually purchase a Premio X package. So basically the ALLION F18 or the Premio X package will actually strike a perfect balance between power and fuel economy. So that is how actually I could actually compare the 3 grades. But still, if you want a little bit of thrill, it's better going for the 20. Some people will actually find that the 20 first, but it also depends on the cars that you interact with and the cars you have driven. So that is how actually I'll compare the 3 variants. For the A15, it's the best for city driving because it has the best fuel economy, but for on the highway it actually feels a little bit underpowered and sluggish. And then for the A18, it is the best when you're looking at blending performance and fuel economy. And then for the 20, it's the best if you want a little bit of thrill. Of course, it doesn't come with a better driving dynamics, but at least it packs more power. At this point, you also want to learn something about fuel economy, because someone who's purchasing a Toyota ALLION, most probably fuel consumption is at the top of their priority list, especially these days when fuel prices are on the roof. Now, when I drove this car from Mombasa last week to Nairobi and covered a distance of 500 kilometers from Mombasa CBD to my home. Now, when I'm looking at the fuel bill, I actually spent 6,000 shillings. Now, with the fuel costing 214 shillings in Mombasa, 6,000 divided by 214 actually comes to around 28 liters and some rough figures. Now, when you try to divide 500 kilometers divided by 28, the figure should actually be around 16-17 kilometers per liter. So that is how fuel efficient this car is. So the biggest talking point of this ALLION A15 from my standpoint, if I was to purchase this car, is that impressive and decent fuel economy. Because I've driven many cars, 1500cc cars from Mombasa to Nairobi and maybe other distances, but I bet this car actually gave me one of the best fuel figures. How does the Toyota ALLION look like when it comes to reliability? Now, for this Toyota ALLION A15, I already say that it works with a 1.5 liter, which is a engine that is applicable in many cars. Last time when I reviewed the Toyota Mark X, I said that Toyota normally likes to hold to something. Let me say, once they find a winning formula, they don't like changing it, because the 1NZF engine has been applied for very many years, and then it's applied in very many Toyota products simply because it's reliable. From my standpoint, the 1NZF is among the most reliable 1500cc engines someone can ever purchase, because this engine actually it has near bulletproof reliability. This engine is actually something you maintain either with a routine maintenance and a routine maintenance, and it is simple to live with. It's not something that can actually surprise you in the morning. The song actually still continues to with the 1.8 liter, that is the 2ZR, and even the 2000cc, that is the 3ZR. So one of the biggest strengths of the Toyota ALLION is actually reliability. It also applies to the twin, of course, the Toyota Premio, because these things are one and the same thing. Now, I started by saying that this car actually has a CVT gearbox. If you've read a lot of automotive articles or you've watched automotive content, you must have read or watched or heard many people complaining about CVT gearboxes. But when I'm looking at this Toyota ALLION A15 CVT gearbox versus the competition, for example, in this case, the competition, the direct driver will be the Nissan Sylphy. I think this CVT gearbox here actually has a better reliability index, because of course I've registered very few issues with this CVT gearbox failing, but from my standpoint those are actually isolated cases. I can actually blame the owners of those cars, because one of them tried to flush the oil and then they used the TF instead of CVT. So when I'm looking at the reliability of this car matters the engine and the gearbox, it's actually pretty simple to live with. Another thing you may want to learn about the ownership cost and the maintenance of this Toyota ALLION, away from this engine 1 ZFE being reliable and the CVT gearbox being actually pretty simple to live with, it's good learning that since the Toyota ALLION is a common car, it's actually going to be very easy sourcing for its parts, because for this ALLION A15, majority of its components, it's going to share many parts with the Toyota, with that Toyota siblings, and then because of the simple engineering of this 1 ZFE and the Toyota ALLION itself, it's not going to be a car that is going to be troublesome, especially if you are living up country. That's why majority of the old folks or people up country, they are going to prefer this car, because they are not going to have a problem, especially when it comes to getting technicians to repair these things. And I bet that is why maybe the old folks in the village, they'll actually prefer to purchase a Toyota ALLION or a Toyota Premio instead of fancy and more powerful or even stylish competitors. Let's talk something about the design of this car. Later on in late 2016, Toyota actually gave the Toyota ALLION some facelift. So from next year, we are going to see more of those cars with the facelift. Now for this specific car, there's not much to talk about this car apart from this grille, maybe the headlamps here and the fog lights. And one thing I like about this car from my little experience, the headlamps for this car are actually one of the best you can actually find in the class. Now coming to the side profile, the ALLION A15 mostly will be coming with steel rims, but for this car it was actually fitted with these forged 15-inch alloy rims, of course with this big profile rubber, which actually give this car some little bit of lift. That is why it actually looked a little bit of raised. On the side you have these side mirror winkers here, and then this doesn't have a chrome finishes. Now this is how the car looks like. It's actually a very pretty simple sedan. Now coming to the rear side of this car, there is also not much to talk about this car, but from this side, on the right side, you can see this A15 badge. Now that you've watched some part of this review, you know that the A15 now tells you what is under the hood. A 1.5 liter 1 ZFE, you have this Toyota badge here and the ALLION name here. Of course, as you can see, there's not much to talk about this car now when it comes to the design. It's actually a pretty simple sedan. Welcome to the cockpit of this 2016 Toyota ALLION, and immediately, as you can tell in how the cabin styling of this car looks like, there is not going to be much to talk about this car. Someone told me not to use harsh words, something like dull, boring and inspiring, but anyone can tell that this interior is not one of the best you can get, especially when you realize that the price point of this car is around 2.1 million. Yes, they told me, I'm not going to use those words basic, boring and inspiring, but let me say it actually fits that description pretty well. So if I was to use some polite word, maybe I could say that it's a little bit minimalist. Anyway, what are the features in this car? You have steering control buttons on the left side here, and then you can actually control your climate settings on this right side here. The infotainment screen here is actually pretty small. The only feature it has, it's actually a reverse camera. And then that is all you can see. The only thing I like about this specific variant is this beige interior. I'm actually a big fan of cars of bright things. In terms of maybe accommodation and storage, you can tell this is my sitting position, my driving position. The amount of knee room is not that bad. The headroom is also good, and then it's actually an accommodative car considering it's a compact sedan. Now, how does the second row seats look like? Maintaining my driving position, you can actually tell that the ALLION is, let me use the word generous in terms of the knee room and the headroom at this back. So people traveling at this back of this Toyota ALLION, they are not going to struggle that much when it comes to comfort over long distance travels. Of course, the person utilizing the middle seat, I could actually say that it's better for children. How about the trunk space? This is the amount of room you have for this Toyota ALLION. I could say that it's average or even better than most of the competition in the class. So it is not going to be that problematic when it comes to loading your luggage. Under this carpet, you're going to find some donut spare wheel, which actually I think at Toyota in that case they are a little bit generous, because nowadays majority of the cars are actually coming with a repair kit. So that's how the Toyota ALLION actually fares in terms of accommodation and features. So should you buy the Toyota ALLION? If you have 2.2 million shillings, 2 million, 2.1, 2.2 million shillings, and you want something that is reliable, something that is efficient, and something that is something that will not break the bank, especially when it comes to maintenance, then this ALLION will actually hit all the right spots. But if you want something that is a little bit powerful, something that is a little bit fancy, something actually that is let me say even stylish, then you better look elsewhere. This is not your cup of tea. Now when I'm looking at this car versus the competition and the price tag, maybe the price may look a little bit inflated and maybe somewhat overpriced, because apart from reliability and maybe that fuel efficient, there is not much that the car will actually be bringing on the table. But to some people, those two things are actually going to matter a lot. Now, there is normally a very big question I normally get. How does the Toyota ALLION compare to the Toyota Premio in terms of value for money? For this ALLION A15, the price being at 2.05, an equivalent Toyota Premio F package with similar specs, because this is actually a grade 4.5 car with 40,000 kilometers mileage. A Toyota Premio with similar specs will actually be going for around 2.5 million shillings. Now, if there is a price difference between this and the Toyota Premio of around 400,000 shillings, you can actually tell that this car is a better value for money than the Toyota Premio, because these cars are actually one and the same thing. Whatever is different is actually up front here in the terms of the lights and the styling, and actually in terms of the boot, because interior accommodation, what is under the hood, these things are actually pretty similar. If I was to purchase a Toyota sedan and I'm torn between a Toyota ALLION and Toyota Premio, it's straightforward that I'm going to place my coin on the Toyota ALLION, because it's going to give me similar practicality and features at actually a cheaper price tag. There is also something I also want to put clear. People are actually saying that these cars actually have a very good resale value. If someone bought a Toyota ALLION at 2010, which was registered in 2017, if they bought a local used car in 2020, most probably they got it for around 1 million, 1.1 million. If that person decides to sell that 2010 ALLION on 2010 Premium right now, they can actually get that 1.1 million or more. Now you can actually see that those cars actually retain their value or hold their value pretty well. But if someone pays for the new generation, okay, even for this one, if someone pays 2.2 million shillings for this car, or even 2.4, 2.5 million for the Toyota Premio, nobody is going to give you over 2 million shillings next year at a time like this one. So you can be sure the Toyota, the resale value fallacy, the resale value is actually somewhat like a fallacy. It's, yes, the resale value of the Toyota ALLION and the Toyota Premio is pretty good for local used cars, but for these new ones, I really doubt if they are going to hold their value pretty well like the traditional ones used to do. For example, the T240 series and the earlier versions of the 260, those cars are actually pretty good when it comes to resale. But for these new ones, with the kind of the prices are actually inflated and exaggerated, I don't think these things are going to hold their value pretty well like they used to do. I think that is all you need to know about this 2016 Toyota ALLION A15. If you want more information about the Toyota ALLION competitors, of course I think the most the direct competitor to the Toyota ALLION is actually the Nissan Sylphy. So if you want information about the Nissan Sylphy, or maybe some sedan, something like maybe the Mazda Xela, maybe the Mitsubishi Galant, or maybe the Subaru Impreza, you can actually find their detailed reviews on our YouTube channel, that is a 0 to 60 Motoring, or even you can find a comparison of those cars on our Facebook page, that is a 0 to 60 Motoring. If you find that this review helpful, consider subscribing to this channel. You can also find our social media platforms on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram and Facebook, and you can actually follow them, because we not only upload car reviews like this, but we also upload car maintenance tips. Remember, if you want to purchase a car that is maybe a Toyota ALLION or another car, we can actually make your process easy. Shoot us a message or call us. You're going to make your car ownership journey easy. I guess that is enough for today, guys. Stay safe and have fun. Let's catch up on the next one. Bye for now.